Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Committee will come to order. And the buzzer actually rang on time. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. This hearing is entitled The Future of Housing in America, Oversight of Rural Housing Service. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the witnesses for appearing for the subcommittee today. I look forward to your testimony. We have contacted housekeeping and mechanical, whoever, to try and turn down the heat and improve the AC. We have our little cozy confines here of our small hearing room today. Hopefully we can get that done. If not, hope everybody will bear with us. I realize that we don't have, I think there's only 2 clocks here that tell time for the witnesses and or the rest of the members of the committee. We'll try and give you a little heads up whenever we're getting down to the 30-second mark here or something. But as everybody knows, you have 5 minutes to ask your questions, and at that point we'll try and be a little bit liberal because of the lack of clock time to know whenever you actually are going to be gavelled out. But as far as that goes, our witnesses are here today, and we certainly welcome them. I'd like to recognize myself for 3 minutes to give an opening statement. Like many of my colleagues, I represent a rural area. My hometown has 336 people. It's a place where it takes several jobs to make a living and where the incredible benefits of living in rural America far outweigh the challenges. These aren't areas that easily attract major construction projects or real estate investors. There's limited housing, particularly for those in need of affordable and rental housing. That's why the mission of the Rural Housing Service is important. That's also why this subcommittee will dedicate time today and in the future to examine the objectives, successes, and opportunities for improvement to RHS. Last week I met with a realtor from Miller County, Missouri. The bulk of her business is with RHS. This isn't a realtor that's making a living off $1 million home sales. This is someone who has spent her adult life in my community and is focused solely on helping qualified borrowers in Miller County get into a home they can afford and have the opportunity to live the American dream. But it sounds like the process of dealing with RHS can be a big nightmare. There is little to no continuity across government programs, and there seems to be a significant lack of flexibility for RHS customers. Systems are outdated and incredibly inefficient. The real estate agent from Miller County tells each of her customers to photocopy and file every check sent to RHS because RHS loses, in her experience, an average of at least 1 mortgage check a year per household. It's 2015, and we have a program that operates like it's 1975. The status quo isn't acceptable. Rural Americans deserve more. RHS should heed suggestions made by GAO and increase interagency collaboration and consider consolidation where appropriate. It's incumbent upon this committee to ensure that RHS is also appropriately managing risk. RHS oversees a $120 billion portfolio in direct loans and loan guarantees, but doesn't have a chief risk officer or modern underwriting systems in place. That's why GAO is currently studying the RHS risk management practices in addition to specific housing assistance programs and duplication of federal housing programs. Today's hearing will allow those concerned with the future of housing, members of this committee, and people across rural America to better understand the challenges facing rural housing and the opportunities to improve a system plagued with inefficiencies. We continue to see throughout the nation an overwhelming need for affordable housing, and we need to ensure that RHS is doing everything in its power to fulfill that need. I want to thank the witnesses for appearing today. We look forward to your testimony. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Missouri, my colleague and friend, Mr. Cleaver, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Housing is always an important discussion for me for a number of reasons. Some of them, maybe the majority of them are from my own personal life's experience. And I often say to groups in both the urban part of my district, Kansas City, Missouri, and in the rural parts of my district, the eastern part, that there's a symbiotic relationship between urban and rural. And I actually wish, this will never happen during my lifetime, but I actually wish that all congressional districts could be designed where there is an urban and a rural component, because I think we would have far fewer political conflicts. And one of the unintended blessings for me when the district lines were redrawn is that I was given 3 rural counties that were previously represented by Congressman Ike Skelton, who had been here 34 years and was born and raised in one of those counties, Lafayette County. So I am very, very happy whenever we get into these issues. I think my district represents a microcosm of the nation. I think everybody is there. The RHS program, which is operated by the USDA, provides the kinds of housing options that do not exist outside rural America. The 502 Guaranteed Loan Program offers borrowers an opportunity for home ownership with no money down, and it keeps rural families where they desire to live in rural America. In my own district, 346 loans were administered in fiscal year 2013, and Missouri ranked as 7th in the nation in administering the Guaranteed Rural Housing Program. The Section 502 Direct Loan Program is the one of only a few programs in the nation which specifically is targeted to low and very low income rural families. And contrary to what perhaps many urban dwellers believe, people in rural areas are in many instances struggling like people in the urban core. And given the lack of credit options, the unacceptable rates of poverty, and the limited housing choices facing many in the rural areas must continue to keep USDA housing programs well funded and productive. In fact, I think we need additional funding, and of course I agree with the chair that there are some things we can do better to streamline the programs that we are operating. But I'm not so sure that we cannot do both, streamline the programs while at the same time making sure that adequate funding is there. Now, finally, and I guess I do need to mention that just because it makes me feel good, the Central Collection and Service Center for this program operates in our state, in St. Louis, Missouri. And so why did I say it? Because I can, and because I want everybody to know. So I want to thank the witnesses, and I'm very, very interested in becoming dialogical with you as we move through this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Today we welcome the testimony of Mr. Tony Hernandez, Administrator, Rural Housing Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Mr. Matthew Charay, is that correct? Director, Financial Markets and Community Investment, U.S. Government Accountability Office. Each of you recognized for 5 minutes to give an oral presentation or testimony. Without objection, each of your written statements will be made part of the record. And with that, Mr. Hernandez, you will start. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here. Chairman Lukemeyer, Ranking Member Cleaver, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before this committee regarding the work we do to support rural families and communities. As administrator, I have the privilege of managing programs that make dreams of homeownership into reality. We provide rental housing that families can afford, and we develop facilities like hospitals, fire stations, and schools that are essential to a thriving rural America. Our housing programs only serve rural families with limited incomes, a segment of the market that private lenders and landlords rarely reach. Through mortgage lending and guarantees and rental assistance to private property owners, we help sustain and grow rural economies. To this effectively, the majority of our staff lives in, works in the areas they serve. We are a storefront operation. Our staff works in America's small rural towns. They focus our programs on the specific economic challenges and opportunities within their region. This intimate, hands-on approach is what makes us unique and effective. We provide the support and direct oversight necessary to serve rural families with limited resources. We remain committed to continuous enhancements of our service to the public through predictability, consistency, accuracy, and enhanced communication. These 4 elements are guiding our process improvements at Rural Housing Services. During my tenure, we are embracing innovation and improvement through automation and streamlining. We are utilizing technology to create efficiencies that benefit rural families, our lenders, our staff, and ultimately the taxpayer. In April, we modernized the Guaranteed Single-Family Housing Loan Program by implementing a paperless operation. Field offices are now able to transact business with approved lenders electronically. This has resulted in significant savings of paper, postage, and most importantly, time. We estimate more than $4 million nationwide will be saved in just 1 year through paperless processing. Similarly, we have begun rolling out new assessment and underwriting tools in our multifamily program. These will improve our transfer process from a willing seller to a willing buyer. It will be more transparent and attract more nonprofits to partner with us. This will extend the value of the federal investment to over 400,000 rural rental properties. Our goal for 2016 is providing more than 170,000 rural residents the assistance needed to become homeowners through $25 billion direct loans and guarantee. Multifamily housing programs request just over $1 billion with the renewals of nearly 250,000 rental assistance agreements and support over 5,000 new units. Funding alone cannot ensure long-term viability to address programmatic challenges. In the multifamily housing program, we propose administrative tools that provide management flexibility to better administer the program. In the single-family housing guarantee program, we propose a user fee to support technology and maintenance costs associated with the automation. We also request delegated loan approval authority for selected high-performing lenders. Although rural America lags in terms of recovery from the recession, the delinquency and foreclosure rates in our housing portfolio remains very low. This is a testament to our prudent underwriting and strong loan servicing and our careful oversight. As of March, the foreclosure rate of the guaranteed loan program is 1.5%, the lowest it has been in nearly 5 years. Even in the direct loan portfolio, more than 9 out of 10 families serve succeeding in maintaining homeownership. Our success is due in part to the strength of our hardworking people in rural America. I believe, and I'm sure that many of you do too, that rural Americans deserve an opportunity to own or rent a decent, safe, and affordable house. Since the passage of the Housing Act of 1949, 3.8 million rural Americans have received housing loans and accumulated assets through equity in their homes. Our single-family housing program fills a gap in the private market. We are one of the most critical resources available to help smaller, poorer, and rural communities gain access to mortgage credit. There is a strong and consistent demand for our programs. We change people's lives every day. Congress has had the foresight to strategically place comprehensive programs for rural America in one agency, USDA. We take seriously the charge to help address unique challenges faced by rural residents in need of safe and affordable housing. Thank you for the opportunity to serve in this agency that uses our programs in support of affordable housing in rural America. I'm happy to answer questions at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Shure, you have 5 minutes. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Cleaver, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss our work involving the Rural Housing Service. My statement focuses on issues involving program overlap, improper rental assistance payments, and management of the Farm Labor Housing Program, as well as preliminary observations from ongoing work assessing risk management in RHS's single-family loan guarantee program. In response to a statutory mandate, GAO has identified federal programs or activities that are fragmented, overlapping, or duplicative. In our 2012 report, we included an analysis of housing programs and activities and reiterated a recommendation that Congress require USDA and HUD examine the benefits and costs of merging these programs that serve similar markets and provide similar products. Later in 2012, we identified opportunities to build on existing coordination efforts among the various agencies. For example, we recommended those efforts be expanded to include evaluating specific opportunities for consolidation that would require statutory change. Such an evaluation would be an important step in enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of federal support for housing. Nonetheless, we recognize that consolidating programs carry certain implications for users, existing programs, personnel, portfolios, and associated information systems. Thus, any evaluations would involve complex analyses, trade-offs, and difficult policy decisions. Meanwhile, RHS needs to continue focusing on improving the management of its ongoing programs. In this regard, I can report that it has taken some important steps to address recommendations in our recent studies of rental assistance and farm labor housing. With regard to the latter, RHS has improved the specificity of compliance review information it maintains in information systems. It has established deadlines for spending obligated funds, and it has sought authority to use the HHS New Hires database to verify tenant income. But it has not completed action on other important recommendations. For example, it could do more to use existing data to target assistance to areas of greatest need. It could better ensure that requirements for tenant eligibility are met across the farm labor housing portfolio, and it could complete its efforts to establish the use of civil money penalties to better enforce program regulations. In the area of rental assistance payments, RHS has sought authority to use the new hires database and taken other steps, but could do more to implement our recommendations. For example, it should seek OMB review of its move to a $100 threshold for considering a payment to be improper. It could also seek authority for using SSA benefits information. Finally, we are currently looking at management of RHS loan guarantee program for single-family loans for the subcommittee. Though this work is still underway, there are a few preliminary observations which I would like to highlight today. To begin, it is important to note that RHS has in place policies and practices and key risk management functions, including underwriting, loan approval, and lender oversight. Also, RHS is taking steps to improve its risk management practices. For example, it is developing an econometric model for estimating program costs and is considering the appointment of a chief risk officer. Nonetheless, there are some areas we are exploring where there may be more RHS can do to manage risk. For example, by better defining key benchmarks, establishing procedures for its credit policy committee, and documenting lines of authority and communication across its risk management structure. As we complete our work, we will consider the need for recommendations addressing these and other issues. Looking forward, we're glad to help the subcommittee in its oversight of these important housing programs. This concludes my opening remarks. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and I'd be glad to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll begin the questioning, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. Let me start with Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Charest has indicated, and we've discussed a little bit ourselves with regards to some of the duplication, overlapping with other agencies. One of the problems with that is cost, to continue to have those programs be available and then overlap and what have you. So with HUD having such a large portfolio and overlapping in so many of the areas, I think the data from Mr. Charest's testimony said that in 2009 showed that 74% of HUD borrowers also met same eligibility for RHS single-family guarantee program. If that's the case, make the case for why we need to continue with RHS.
Great question, Mr. Chairman. You know what's nice about USDA and rural development, our focus is just on rural folks. We only deal with people in rural America. And as you know, in rural America, the salaries and the wages are much less. We have products that are designed just for folks in rural America if they can qualify. So, I'm sorry, sir.
Okay, let me interrupt there. Okay, if that's okay, I understand that part. Then why is FHA or why is HUD encroaching on your area? Should we back them off?
I have an answer for you, sir.
Okay,
Let me get there.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay, what we're trying to do is make sure we have a product that provides the right type of product for our folks. Our folks' incomes are about $29,000 for the direct program, about $50,000 for the guarantee. But at the same time, these individuals or families cannot afford a down payment, which FHA requires a 3.5% down payment. And they also have an upfront MIP cost, which makes it unaffordable for a lot of the customers in rural America. And that's why Congress created us. They're trying to say, do you have a product that really meets the needs of rural America? Ours does. Ours is 0% down, no closing costs. So we actually have our lenders in the guarantee program that actually certify that they cannot get conventional lending. Some of our folks that qualify for FHA, we say, you should go get FHA then. But if you don't have a down payment or can afford a mortgage insurance premium as high as FHA provides, that's why Congress created us to have a product that meets their needs. And so we both provide loans, but we have different customers. Our customers are those that cannot afford a down payment or MIP.
Well, my point, though, Mr. Hernandez, was that 2009 data shows that 74% of HUD borrowers also met your eligibility requirements. So, Mr. Charest, give me an explanation of that comment.
Well, what we did was look at program data from both RHS and FHA, and including income for the borrowers and where their property is located, and that's what that number represents: is the the percentage of FHA borrowers that were in RHS eligible, actually the most rural RHS eligible areas, and borrowers that also met their income test.
Okay, so Mr. Hernandez just says there's a niche for RHS. Would you agree to that then?
I think that's uncertain, and I have not seen any data that would demonstrate what proportion of RHS borrowers would be unable to obtain an FHA-insured mortgage, for example. So within the guaranteed program, it's less and less obvious with time that what RHS is offering is unique. The 3.5% down payment is certainly something that distinguishes the RHS guarantee product from the FHA. And if I am a rural resident with lower income, I might want to go with the RHS product. So that doesn't mean that I couldn't get another product with a little down payment.
Okay, well, I got a minute left, so let me switch gears a little bit to the risk management portion of this. Mr. Charette, you indicate that there's some problems there, but that the agency is making some progress. Could you elaborate just a little bit?
Well, there are some things that of course, our work is still ongoing, and so, but the first thing we wanted to look at was to see what sort of policies and practices they have in place, and they do meet a lot of what you would expect for a credit program.
Well, if we have a 1.5% past due ratio, I believe that's what Mr. Hernandez testified. Do we have a problem?
I would look very carefully at those estimates. So I don't know whether that is an indicator of strength in a program or weakness.
Well, let me take a time out here. Mr. Hernandez, what's your loss ratio?
Okay, we have for historic losses 2.2%. Historic.
2.2%.
Wait a minute, Mr. Chairman. What I'm trying to do is not only do we offer a product that meets the needs, it also doesn't cost the government or the taxpayers dollars.
Okay, just a second. My time's almost out here. Mr.
That is
Schreck,
less certain.
Is that an acceptable level?
I think that the long-term costs of the program are uncertain.
Okay. All right. My time's expired with that, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We will yield 5 minutes to the distinguished Mr. Kildee first. Okay. We'll go with Mr. Kildee, the distinguished gentleman from Michigan, for 5 minutes.
I started to get a little worried when you began to excise the distinguished part when you discovered it was going to be me.
You'd be surprised what I can determine from behind.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you both for being here, and I do have a couple questions for each, but I want to start with Mr. Hernandez and ask you a bit more about how your agency works with partners on the ground. I think obviously the importance of the program speaks for itself, and I want to get into some of the detail in terms of some of the analysis that's been done. But I wonder if you could talk to us about how your agency collaborates with other stakeholders and industry partners on the ground to maximize the resources that you have?
Great, thank you very much. It's a great question. In order for us to be successful, we have to have key partners and stakeholders. We work a lot with nonprofits. We require home buyer education as part of it. And that's why we use metrics to measure the success of the program. It's not just making a loan that's effective. It's how do you keep people in the home. And the way we do this, we work with packagers or nonprofits to do home buyer education. That is a growing need. In order to have successful programs, you have to have the right partners. When Congress reduced our budget level, we lost about 20% of our staff, which means the staff we had to go out and find customers were lost. Also the staff that actually do the loans and the direct were lost. So the good apart from that is that we had an opportunity to look at how we do business better. And so that's why we spent so much time doing what we call business process improvement. We do Lean Six Sigma, trying to find better ways to do that. And one of the things that came out with is how we work with partners. And so how do we work with the nonprofits so they can help us find additional customers so we can close loans. So we call those packagers. We have a new rule coming out right now that allow us to actually compensate nonprofits so they help us do the work. So we have a two-pronged strategy, trying to find the customers. We do it, they do it, because we don't have enough staff. So it really requires us to have strategic partnerships. And with that, that's how we get better loan performance. You know, it's kind of nice. Our performance right now with the single-family direct is 2.3%. That is very, very good performance. That's first-year delinquency, sir. That means we're picking the right folks in the first year, and they do not lose their home. 9 out of 10 people. These folks make $29,000. Sometimes a family of 3 or 4. $29,000. And with the partnership that we have, We're actually keeping them in the homes. With the guarantee program, we have the lowest, as of March, we have the lowest delinquency rates of 1.56%. It's the lowest in our history. Very, very good performance, which contributes to the success of our program. Not only are we managing the program well, it's also not costing us. We're very fortunate in the guarantee program with our partners as well, with realtors and lenders and nonprofits. They're helping us find ways to get more home ownership. So we're trying to find strategic partnerships, sir. That's what we do.
Thank you. And I wonder, is it Mr. Skyer? Sheree. Sorry, I wasn't here when you started. I wonder if I could just, thank you again, Mr. Hernandez. I wonder if I could just get you to comment a little bit further on the questions about performance. You indicated that it was unclear to you what the performance was on the direct loan or on the guarantee program. Could you expand on that, because I'm a little bit confused about what data you might be looking at? And
the question was whether it was good or bad, and so I would want to compare that with some other cohort to tell you whether or not it's relatively good or bad. So
let's say, how would it compare to if in fact one of the potential recommendations would be to merge this program with other existing programs? Wouldn't it make sense, before coming to that conclusion, to compare the performance of this program to the program that you might merge it with?
Absolutely. I think when we talk about opportunities for consolidation and coordination, we're not necessarily assuming that the best practices are at FHA. Some of the better practices might be at Rural Housing Service, but then why wouldn't FHA take advantage of those? But to get back to the question about comparative performance, the analysis has not been done yet that would hold constant some of the factors that could explain the loan performance you're seeing with RHS versus FHA. And that's one of the areas where we think actually some of the benchmarking that RHS does can be improved, because it's important to control, for example, when the loan was made, where it was made, and some other borrower characteristics. That might explain more the differences you're seeing in loan performance than the operation of the RHS program.
Okay. One of the things that, and this relates to not just this program but others, that I would really encourage anyone who's analyzing these programs to look at, and this is very rarely attempted, is to try to measure the positive externalities, even considering the risk and potential default, but to measure the positive externalities of home ownership programs on housing in neighborhoods that have nothing to do with the programs directly, but actually receive pretty significant benefits in terms of equity preservation and stability in those communities. We talk about all sorts of ways of measuring these programs, and especially in the rural environment, supporting home ownership has value that goes well beyond the recipient of the support that got them into a home in the first place, in terms of maintaining some degree of stability in the market. And so I know that's difficult to do, but I would certainly encourage you to do that. And I wonder, Mr. Hernandez, if you could comment quickly on the loan origination process and how you think that works and results in positive outcomes for you.
May I answer, sir?
All right, am I done?
Great.
All right. All right.
Yes, sir. What's nice about the direct program we have is storefront operations, so folks can either come directly to us in each of our offices in the rural areas. And importantly, right now we're working with our partners to create what we call electronic file submission by nonprofits, so they can help us submit loan applications. We still underwriting, we still make the decision, but with a delinquency and industry standard, anything up below 5% is very good in performance. We're at 2.3%. We are doing very well. And the guarantee, our lenders do it. We try to monitor our lenders, and we have the lowest first-year delinquency, 1.5%. It's very, very good. And we're
Very
working
good.
more with those lenders.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the additional
Yep.
time.
Yep. With that, we go to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to
5
thank the chair for holding this hearing. I come from a rural district, Virginia's 5th district, and it's the largest, geographically largest district in the state of Virginia. And so we know rural, and also believe that a huge part of what we need to be doing here in Washington is adopting policies that make give greater access to capital all across Virginia, all across rural Virginia, because obviously the people that you serve need better jobs, need good, more better income, and that's obviously a part of what I think the focus on our committee should be, and I think it is. I guess my question is, building on the chairman's questions about sort of the differences between now and I guess this agency was created back in the 40s, and sort of the difference between now and then also the difference between what your agency does in the context of HUD and VA programs. I guess my question is, and it sounds like you are supportive of the idea of consolidation and trying to streamline things, but from my understanding, the administration began this or indicated that it was interested in a single family housing task force back in 2011. I guess my question is what's the progress, Mr. Hernandez, of this consolidation review, and why on earth is it taking so long to develop some clear understanding of where we can streamline these programs and make them make them serve the taxpayer as well as the target of the benefit, and then once you answer, I'd like to get Mr. Shure's
Sure.
Comments.
Great, thank you, Mr. Congressman. What's really nice about our program is we are, again, stated before, we are for rural folks only. What we're interested in doing is trying to create the products and programs and processes that focus on delivering a better service to customers. We participate with the Joint Federal Housing Subcommittee looking for ways to streamline and align to similar processes if there's opportunity. But because we have different missions, HUD is urban. That's why they call them housing urban development. We are focused just on rural Americans. And as you know, representing a rural district, rural is different than urban. You have to find different ways to provide service to folks because they live so far away. So how do we find an outreach model with partners to provide service?
Well, I guess, but so do you support the idea that that the administration sort of led the way in 2011 in terms of consolidating and making these programs more efficient between the agencies?
What we support right now, sir, is providing better service to our customers. And right now,
well, it
that is
doesn't
not
sound like consolidation.
No, not necessary, sir, not necessary. Sometimes you look at how do you do better alignment. Some people have better core expertise. Ours, we probably have the best guaranteed program in the country right now, better than anybody else. We have some best practices that maybe other agencies should come to us. But what we're trying to do is how do we make a better program and reach out to customers better? Oh, we're doing a great job. And that's why we need your help. We've come forward this year to help address that. Let me give you an example. One of our biggest barriers, the difference between when we were created and now, we do everything manually. Mr. Chairman, you had a great example. We are a manual process, sir. Now, I've been in the housing industry for over 30 years. You cannot be making copies of checks and sending them. We just came to the 21st century in December 1. We now have an electronic system for all of our guarantee program. We save $5 million a year. We save time. We can get a response now in 48 hours. Couldn't do that back in 1930. The rest of the industry was there. We are there now, and it actually saves money. What's great about our program, it does not cost the taxpayer any dollars. It pays for itself. We have a zero subsidy program, sir. What a wonderful program, create opportunities, open doors, have strategic partnership, and it doesn't cost the taxpayer any money. What a
But
great work
that
by
is what
Congress.
they said about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Well, I don't know about them.
Until
I can only
until
talk
it
about
cost us $200 billion.
I
Could
see the light is turning yellow
Yep.
if I could.
Mr. Shure, yeah, please.
There's a lot there. The task force is limited. It's not really looking at statutory changes that might be needed for doing further consolidation, so we think its charge could be expanded. But I think what you heard just now is part of the dilemma is this notion that USDA has that HUD is quote-unquote urban. HUD does far more on rural areas than does RHS. So HUD would deny the notion that they are solely focused on urban areas. And the idea that there's a zero cost to this program remains to be seen. I would point out that there is a big difference here between the FHA and the USDA program, and that is FHA is required to maintain a reserve. So actually, it's more likely to have a zero cost than rural housing service. But the first step in any of this process is to admit there is a possible problem here. And so I think that would be important for USDA and HUD to open up to the notion that there is overlap. Okay. And so I look forward to them entertaining that idea.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go to the ranking member, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shure, even if some shoes are cute, but too small, won't they hurt?
Naturally.
Yes. And more is not always better. Do you agree?
Not always, no.
Yes, yes. The point here is HUD operates more programs in the rural areas than the housing program that operates in Mr. Hernandez's department.
Yeah.
When
I'm
you
limiting my remarks there to the 502 guaranteed program.
okay, same thing. Okay, 502, 504, 514, 516 programs. They have a potpourri of programs, and so I mean, I think the Housing Act was passed in '37. HUD was created in 1965. Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Do you agree then that HUD almost automatically leans urban?
No, I don't. I think that HUD would disagree with that assertion also. But they see themselves as serving the entire country. So that is a distinction, I think, between Rural Housing Service and HUD, is that Rural Housing Service is limited to quote-unquote rural areas. In fact, much of the nation is eligible
I would
for
disagrei
rural
with the
housing.
Secretary, or you, for that matter, that HUD does not lean urban. I mean, I can give you some examples. A quick one would be...
I'm not sure what lean urban means, actually.
Lean means that...
What we base it on is where they are. And actually, the work that they do and the products they offer are all across the country, and they are not as concentrated in rural areas, but they actually serve more borrowers in the single-family guarantee space than does RHS.
HUD has limited experience in administering programs that are designed exclusively for rural areas.
No, that's not correct. HUD actually does have programs that are designed for rural areas.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I said they have limited experience.
Okay.
If I didn't say limited experience, I apologize, but I meant limited experience. Do you agree with that?
That's not the largest part of their portfolio are programs targeted to rural areas, but they do have some programs that are targeted to rural areas.
But limited experience in working in the 502 program.
But they don't work in the 502 program at all.
So they have no experience.
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking about operating in a 502 program. They do operate a single-family loan guarantee program, which is very similar to the 502 guaranteed loan program.
Yeah, look, one of the things that makes Washington operate with an odor is that, some people automatically on one side, that we're supposed to say everything that HUD is doing is great, and the other side is saying HUD is not supposed to be great, and I think that's why we don't make the kind of progress. I think that the chairman is right, and I think we need to look at these programs. Yeah. But what I would also like to make sure we understand and acknowledge, and that is that what HUD does is dramatically different than what is done in rural areas. And it was intended to be that way. As Mr. Hernandez said, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and they lean urban. HUD leans urban. And we have to give, or why would we put why do we say urban America? CDBG grants, for example. In our state, the people who get the annual allocation, Kansas City, the largest city, St. Louis, the second largest city, Springfield, the third largest city, Independence, the fourth largest city. If you live in a rural America, the money goes to the state. You have to compete with other small communities to get CDBG dollars or 108 loan monies. So we lean urban with HUD, don't you?
I just don't agree with the concept of leaning urban, and I don't think that HUD would agree with that. But clearly, HUD does operate in the same markets that USDA operates in terms of single-family loan guarantees.
If a HUD secretary doesn't believe that, he or she should go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. With that, we go to the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you having this hearing. I share the concern of Mr. Cleaver there that if we're going to do something, that we remember the rural areas. Mr. Hurd mentioned that he represents the largest rural district in Virginia. My district is almost twice the size of all the state of Virginia. I represent more dirt than anybody here. True. And so I just want to keep you aware that we'll watch for the rural piece of this. Mr. Hernandez, you had mentioned that quite possibly there are some best practices in your agency where other agencies should come and take from you. Could you give me 2 or 3 of those?
One of those, sir, is how we do our guarantee program. We never own the property. What we do is we provide through our lenders guaranteed lending, guarantee 90% of the loan. They provide the loans. If the loan should go bad,
I'm asking for the program, not the full explanation on.
It would be the guarantee program, sir.
Okay, and any other?
Another would be how we do work with our packagers, how we provide fee to packagers.
Yeah, and so in your testimony on page 2, you talk about Rita Fincher of Park Hills, Missouri. And do you ever track how much you invest in? And I appreciate the story you're telling here and helping someone out of homelessness. Do you ever track how much that you've invested in any of these projects? For instance, what was the total expenditure on that one, since you mentioned it in your testimony?
I don't remember the exact dollars, but we do track it by...
Just roughly how much?
It depends on, up to $20,000.
Up to $20,000, okay. And for that, what did you actually do?
Well, sometimes we do safety.
On this case, you brought it up in your testimony, so what were you actually doing?
We actually sometimes repair the roof, do some safety, bathrooms, safety. Most of the time for
okay, but you're saying in here you got her out of homelessness. So what actually did you do? It sounded like you did more than safety. I'm just trying to let you tell your story here.
Sure. We helped move her into a house that she could own long term. So she actually became a home buyer. That's what we're trying to get to.
Okay, so by giving her cash assistance.
Home buyer education with our partner, getting them to find a house that she can afford, helping with jobs that are in the area that she then qualifies for a house, and then we get there in the house. And what's nice about the program, sir, if she has difficulty making the payments, we work with her to make sure she stays and be successful.
Okay. Also, in your answer to one of the questions, you mentioned that your agency is constantly looking for ways to streamline. Could you give me a couple of those ways?
Perfect, sir. One of our proposals asks for what we call delegated underwriting. Right now, we review every loan manually, one at a time. That's not where the industry is. What we're trying to do is just give delegated authority to the top performing lenders. That will streamline the process, get decisions much faster. Second part of that is having a way to generate dollars to improve technology. So we have a proposal that asks for up to $50 flat fee per loan closed only. That's data for automation. Another example would be that we're working with reducing our time for loss mitigation. It used to take us 230 days to assign a loan, sir. We do it now processing less than 19 days. So with all the investment of technology, business improvement, retraining staff, we're providing better service every day.
Okay. Just to put in context, you mentioned in your statement that in 2014 you helped 146,300 families, 870 built their own homes. And keep in mind there are 46 million people on food stamps, and so don't know exactly how many of those are in the rural areas, but in my rural area, our average income is about 32,000, and so we have a lot of need there. So when I sit here and I see that our kind of bragging point is that we helped 146,000 people, that feels like a small number sitting up here listening, but I don't mean to diminish it, but just so that you would understand. Now, the GAO had suggested in 2010 and 2012 different changes. Have you all looked at those, and what have you done?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, as Mr. Schreier has indicated, we're making significant progress in a lot of the areas that we've identified with. We are both aligning with HUD in places where it's appropriate. We're also building on our best practices in different places. So we are making progress.
Have you thought about converting your 521 program to just a voucher program?
We looked at that, and the reason, the way we're created, our focus is on rental assistance, sir. We provide a subsidy to a project. We are not like HUD. HUD has something called a Section 8. It costs more to do that. We're looking for a way that's more streamlined, effective, and we believe our rental assistant is the best way to go, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. With that, we go to the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Beatty. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. I'm still trying to figure out if my cute shoes today hurt or if they're comfortable. But thank you. But thank you, Mr. Cleaver. I'm from Ohio, and my 3rd congressional district does not have a lot of rural, but in the great state of Ohio, maybe my colleague Mr. Stivers and others would have more of that rural. But I come with some 20 years of experience, housing experience. More specifically, you mentioned Section 8 with public housing, working with Section 8. So I'm not quite as familiar with some of the intimate details with rural housing. But some of the information that I received talks about in rural housing, you can give direct funds to someone to buy a home. That would be somewhat unheard of, or a disclaimer in public housing. You know, if someone gave you a loan, then you wouldn't be able to qualify, and you wouldn't be able to get it unless you're part of the self-sufficiency move out. So I see them as quite different. So I guess my question to you is, given the current existing shortage of the number of available and affordable rental units in both rural housing and HUD or urban housing supply, and the long-standing of underfunding of federal affordable housing programs, could you describe to me any concerns you would have with consolidating rural housing and HUD programs, as some had suggested?
Sure. There are concerns when you look at any consolidation. What you're looking for, what is the best way to meet the customer need? What we have found is our rental assistance, and Congress was very good. About 30 years ago, they had a strategic decision they made. They said, we're going to invest in rental assistance. 30 years ago, we have 14,000 properties, 400,000 families whose income are between $10,000 and $12,000. 60% of those folks are elderly and disabled that live in rural America. They want to stay there. So we, with your help, created a policy and a program called rental assistance, and that program works very well. The challenge we have is those properties are coming to maturity right now. We have 11,576 properties whose contract with us and through Congress is coming to an end. That means the subsidy, which is 30% of their income that they pay for rent, will go away unless Congress decides to help us find a way to address this challenge. So we have folks that potentially could be homeless. So we're looking for the opportunity today to recommit to providing affordable housing and rental housing in rural America. To do that, we have to address our maturing mortgages problem and challenge that we have. To do that, we use rental assistance. Now, the reason rental assistance is a great tool is because it's not a Section 8 product. It stays with the building, so we reinvest in that building, remodernize that building. We have the private sector providing the services. We're a guarantee, we provide a loan. So the private sector is providing the service. What a nice partnership that Congress created here for us to provide service to them. And that's what we do today. So with those owners today, we are working with them to preserve as many of those properties as possible. And to do that, we have to find ways to reduce the cost.
Are you familiar? On the HUD side, we had something like that, and it was called Project Base. And it was a 20-year program that was developed. And then in more recent years, unlike what you just described, the federal government took away those Project Base. It was even with homes. So, for example, if I owned several homes, then the Public Housing Authority through HUD would give me the money to fix it up, and I got it. Now it's a lot different in terms of that. Tenant does something to your home, you're responsible for fixing it up, and there are no dollars for renovating. So there's a difference. When you're in urban areas, it's always quite interesting to me, and I don't know if either one of you gentlemen can help me out, but if we're talking about rural and we're talking about farmers, it's a subsidy. And when we're talking about rural and we're talking about housing, it doesn't have the negative connotation that as soon as we go to urban, people make it like they're getting a handout or that they're getting welfare. But you make it sound so eloquent, and oftentimes in the same committee, when we're talking about urban or inner city, it just seems like a more negative connotation to lifestyles and individuals.
Great.
So I'd be interested in your comments on that.
Well, in the single-family arena, one might ask the question, why isn't it that a lower-income household who wants to buy a home in an urban area shouldn't have access to the no-down payment mortgage that Rural Housing Service offers? For example, in the multifamily arena, I think the programs there are a lot of similarities, but they're not quite as similar as in the single-family arena. And here, RHS can offer a 1% loan for a builder to construct a building and have rental assistance with it too. So it really makes that property possible. So I'm not so sure that same kind of provisions you could find in an urban area.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we go to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams.
Thank
for
you,
5
Mr. Chairman.
minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks all of you witnesses, you too, for being here today. We appreciate it. Sure. This committee, as you probably know, spends a lot of time discussing taxpayer risk. Sure. Whether that is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or rural housing programs, Congress has a responsibility to end today to make sure taxpayer risk is minimized or eliminated. In addition, making sure programs are run efficiently and reach those who most need them is something that I hear from my constituents back in Texas quite a bit. So my first question to you, Administrator Hernandez, is the Rural Housing Service currently has a portfolio of $120 billion. Sure. You got a 2012 GAO report entitled Housing Assistance, Opportunities Exist to Increase Collaboration and Consideration Consolidation, found that FHA, for example, served a significant larger number of rural communities than the RHS, as we talked about this morning. Yet RHS has a much larger workforce serving a smaller population. So my first question would be, can you tell me how many federal employees work for RHS?
Sure. We have about 1,500.
Say it again.
RHS, I have 100 in D.C., I have 500 in St. Louis, is what I have. Now, we have other staff within rural development, sir. The way it works, rural development is more than just RHS. Rural development includes utilities, broadband, and small business. My RHS, I only have a total of 600 employees for RHS.
Okay.
Nationwide.
So secondly, please help me understand how this workforce will change over the next decade, especially as federal budgets get smaller and smaller.
Right. You know what's nice about our programs? We do rural development. We do community development. It includes more than just housing. As you know, in Texas, we have, I think, over 11 different offices in Texas. We're a storefront operation, so we're different than any other federal agency. People can come to us to ask. And the way we're getting better, sir, is we're automating and streamlining the process. That's what makes our programs more effective and more efficient. So what we're trying to do is find ways to build on the success that we've had in the past. I'm sorry, Mr. I didn't want to keep talking. I wasn't sure you were going to hear my answer. And so.
But how are you going to change, real quick? I mean, you're going to have change because budgets are going to get smaller.
Right. And the way we've been changing is doing business process improvements, sir. In almost every program we have, we're trying to find a way with less staff, how do you do it better? That requires partnership and commitment with Congress and us to provide appropriate dollars for automation. Because we can't be everywhere, but our customers should be able to come to us either through a portal and find a way to provide service that way. So we're looking for your help to do that, both on the single-family side and the multifamily side.
Sometimes, like the private sector, you've got to do more with less and give good service.
We've been very good doing more with less. We've lost close to over 20% of our staff in the last 4 years, sir, and we're producing more with less staff. We could do even more with your help as you help us support a number of our proposals that provide more integrity, more streamlining, more effectiveness to the program, but requires an investment and a continued support for affordable housing.
Next question. I know we've talked today about there's more than 330,000 units maturing by the year 2024.
It's 11,576, sir.
I'm sorry?
11,576 properties.
By 2024?
Yes, sir.
Potentially.
Sure.
Owners of these units must decide to move out of this program.
That's correct.
So my question is, if less and less people are in the program but the need is still there, who fills the void? Can the private sector, you've talked a little bit about the private sector. I'm a private sector guy. I believe the private sector can do everything almost, okay? Can the private sector come in and offer a viable option for affordable rural housing? And if you come to Congress and ask for help with some ideas?
Great question. The reason Congress...
Well, I ask you.
It's a great question, sir. Well, the reason the private sector does not provide it, sir, we are in a market that the private sector does not serve. It is riskier to lend in rural America. It is riskier for developers to be in rural America. It's hard to get workers in rural America. And that's where Congress says, we have a good idea. What they says, we're going to provide a guarantee to reduce the risk, encourage the private sector. What's nice about our programs, It's the private sector that are operating the buildings, not the government. It's the private sector. So in partnership with the private sector, we're providing a service that would not be provided unless we had a partnership. So, sir, we're building on your success of how to partner with the private sector, and we're doing it through guarantees, low-interest loans, and incentives to bring the private sector to provide a service that would not be there unless the government and the private sector partner together.
Okay, that's good. Don't give up on the private sector. My next question is to you, Director Charest. As we heard in your testimony this morning, housing assistance programs are fragmented across multiple federal agencies, some 160 in total. In 2011, this administration announced it was going to begin to examine consolidating home ownership loan programs. So my question is, in your opinion, would reducing the number of housing assistance programs hurt Americans living in rural areas or potentially help them by offering more efficiently run programs?
It has the potential to streamline the operations of these programs. I think that it's also important that you carefully look at whatever change you might decide upon so that it wouldn't have a detrimental effect on those who are in greatest need. So I don't think that necessarily a reducing number of programs somehow must have a negative effect on those that are served.
Possibly could be potentially a positive thing.
It all depends, on how this is designed. So, but again, I think the first step is recognizing that there is some overlap here and there's some opportunities, and that's why we recommended that these task forces be expanded to include looking at those things requiring statutory change.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. With that, we go to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Rothfuss, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to start my clock so I know where I'm at. Thank you. There we go. This is a great discussion, and appreciate the witnesses being here this morning. As I look at some of the challenges our nation is facing over the coming years, the need to adopt some efficiencies within our government agencies, much like we've been seeing happening in the private sector. As companies in the private sector find redundancies and decide to put certain offices together and save on some overhead and a lot of further collaboration. As the ranking member mentioned, he'd like to see a lot of districts have a combination of both the urban and the rural. That pretty much describes my district. I go right down to the city line in Pittsburgh, and then I stretch out to the Ohio border and all the way east to Johnstown, covering about 120 miles of southwestern Pennsylvania. So we have many of these issues, both from an urban perspective and from a rural perspective. Mr. Hernandez, I understand that HUD and VA and USDA and Treasury all agreed to work toward meeting some GAO recommendations and report on ways to consolidate potentially duplicative housing programs. Have the agencies gotten together to discuss the GAO recommendations?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, we meet monthly looking for opportunities to align together to save money, streamline process. An example of that, we're working with the VA right now. Since they have more foreclosures, they have about 1,000 per month. We only have 1,657 for the whole year. That's all we have. VA has close to 1,000 every month. So our core expertise is not in doing REO property. That's not what we're good at. We're good at making loans. And so we're trying to partner with people that have some other core expertise. So we're working with VA right now to see maybe they can be the guys that work with us in our REO and our direct program, rather than us trying to create the new wheel.
Have the agencies developed a list of objectives on where they might be able to?
I think what we identified is identify the opportunities rather than objectives. Where can we find opportunities to work together? And they're in a number of areas: REO, appraisal, standardizing servicing practices, doing inspections of properties on the multifamily side. So we have identified opportunities. An example where we've done together and learned together is how we do a best practice in using handheld devices to inspect multifamily properties. It came out of working together. Somebody else does it, so how do we build on that? So we now are coming out with our new handheld devices to inspect multifamily properties because we don't have enough people anymore. It takes a while to drive in Texas to go find those places.
Mr. Charest, would you agree with Mr. Hernandez's description?
I agree that those task forces have focused more on how to improve processes, and I think that over time that will result in benefits as a consequence, but they're not focusing on opportunities for consolidation. I think what will happen over time is that as these programs become more and more alike, because of this alignment of processes and so forth, it'll make the transition a little easier. But they're not focusing. The part of the charter is not to focus on these opportunities that would require statutory changes.
Mr. Schroeder, you talked a little bit about improper rental assistance payments at RHS in your testimony. Could you talk a bit about what leads to improper payments going out the door?
Well, there could be a lot of reasons. Some are because of the processing that a payment is made that's incorrect, but the focus typically is more on the calculation of what the payment should be. And there it's important to understand and verify the tenant's income, because the payments on rental assistance, for example, are based in part on what the tenant's income is.
Can RHS do anything to recoup the improper payments that have gone out?
There's more that it can do, and it has begun exploring hiring a contractor to go after some of these improper payments. It's a real challenge because each payment may not be that great, and so but there may be lots of them.
Let me ask a final question for Mr. Hernandez. As again, we look at those challenges across over the next 5 to 10 years, in ways to have government be more efficient, accountable. If we ever found the office of RHS somehow under the same agency as HUD, are there things that folks at RHS could be teaching HUD?
You know, there's best practices in every agency. One of the opportunities we have is trying to find a way to address this cost or improper payments. One of our proposals that we have is to ask for what we call the new hire database. We do not have statutory authority to do that. We've been trying to get statutory for years and years. We come and ask Congress, please give us the authority to improve the integrity of the program. And so far, we haven't been successful in getting that passed.
Well, the concept is there's similar operations going on in the housing space. And to have the cross-fertilization and collaboration that may be there, I think could lead to more effective government.
Effective government is great, and we all want that, but to do that sometimes we have to partner together, and sometimes the answer is not obvious. Consolidation doesn't mean it's right. It's one of the options that people look at. The focus is on the customer.
It's a lot of consolidation happening in the private sector because, again, there's a discipline of the market. Where folks in the private sector have to try to make ends meet with what they have.
Sir, we have consolidation that happens in RHS every year as budgets are reduced. Our same staff do this work for multiple programs. It's really important you understand that when my staff that do RHS also do utilities, also do community facilities, also do small business, we have consolidated to provide services to our customers.
I yield back.
Thank you. And that we go to the gentlelady, the ranking member of the entire committee, Ms. Waters from California.
Thank you very much. I wanted very much to come in and participate in this hearing because we have been talking at the problems of rural housing for a long time. But I am dumbfounded as I watch what we do in this committee. And I don't understand why, particularly those representatives who have rural areas in their district, don't understand how they can do more to help their rural communities. I'm not going to talk a lot about consolidation because I don't think that is should even be considered. As we look at the needs of rural housing, I think we should be talking about how we not complicate their problems by consolidating in HUD or with anything else. I can recall that we did a bipartisan effort when we talked about an exception to the QM rule for the banks that dealt with rural housing and providing those mortgages. And while some of us had been against balloon payments for years because we thought that disadvantaged, homeowners, you made us understand why this was important to rural communities. We get that. And one of the reasons I wanted very much to be able to support that is because I'm amazed at what lack of representation rural communities have, not only in housing, but in healthcare services, you name it. I mean, if it wasn't for urban legislators who fight for money and don't mind being called tax and spend liberals, the rural communities wouldn't get anything because rural representatives don't fight for them enough. And so I'm against, complicating, their needs by talking about throwing them into HUD that does not have enough money to do anything. As a matter of fact, HUD has millions on waiting lists across the country. And so to talk about supporting RHS just doesn't make good sense. So I want to just say to Mr. Hernandez and Mr. What is your name? Sheree. Do you understand how consolidation is going to make it better for rural housing? I mean, are you able to articulate that somehow consolidations is going to do what we have not done all these years for rural housing? If so, tell us right now.
Madam Congressman, we're committed to trying to find the best delivery process we have. We believe the programs in the USDA focused on rural Americans is the best way to provide services. Our focus is only on those folks that have limited income in rural America, only in rural America. Now, Congress will change the definition of rural America. We will do whatever Congress wants to do on that definition. But we're focused, laser focused on how to improve people's lives. And as you know, housing is a conduit to family, neighborhood, and community. That's why we put so much focus. So with Congress's help, we're improving our processes, automating our process. We have legislative proposals that will fix and streamline things, but we need support for Congress to do that. And one happens to be...
So how does consolidation help you?
Yeah. I don't think consolidation is going to help us solve...
That's all I want to hear. Sir, how does consolidation help?
Well, consolidation would make more efficient this delivery system.
That, you have not said anything.
And so
tell me what
for
you
USDA, first off, I think that how you consolidate makes a big difference as to whether it could help or hurt, right? And so there's a way to do this where it can actually have USDA provide greater focus on where the greatest need is.
Okay, you're in front of the committee now, people who care about this issue.
Yeah.
Tell us the how. How do you do that?
Well, okay, so we haven't done the analysis to tell you exactly
Of
how
course
to do
you
it.
have not.
But I can easily imagine where
No
you would want to
imagination
have,
today.
where you would want
Facts.
USDA
Yeah,
to
no,
focus
I can imagine a lot
its
of
direct
things.
to guaranteed
Well,
program.
just one
more.
moment.
As it
Please
is,
don't
the
imagine
guaranteed
here.
program is becoming
How
larger
does
and larger.
consolidation help rural housing? Don't give me your imagination. Give me some facts.
The fact is that if USDA were able to focus more on those areas of greatest need, consolidation could actually
Taking
help
back
in
my
better
time, members. There it is. Now, for those of you, I don't have any rural areas, but I've often thought it's not fair that we don't pay the attention I've often wanted us to come together on a good approach to dealing with urban and rural and being fair to both. And you guys are missing out because you have people with imaginations who come in here and tell you they can imagine something rather than facts. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. With that, we go to the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I can tell you that there's an instance that affects my district where I don't have to imagine, where there are actual facts that demonstrate the problem of duplication and overlap. As you know, if Congress had not passed a grandfather extension in the 2014 Farm Bill, there would have been 921 communities that would have lost their eligibility to USDA rural housing programs, including 2 in my district, Nicholasville, Kentucky, and Georgetown, Kentucky. As the dynamics of rural America change, especially in the prevalence of rural communities that are near the statistical area of a metropolitan area, the problem becomes distinguishing between what is rural and what is non-rural. And we have rural places that are near urban areas. And as a result of those changes, and because of the complexity of this distinction between rural and non-rural, we had a situation that if Congress had not intervened to clarify what these rural places were, these rural places would have been excluded from the rural housing programs that Mr. Hernandez is part of the administration for. So my question would be, what is the recommendation for a rural definition that would ensure that rural communities in metropolitan statistical areas are not excluded? And wouldn't it be more sensible if you had a single agency responsible for all low-income housing, so that as population shift and change and rural, non-rural boundaries become a little bit more difficult to distinguish, wouldn't it make a lot more sense if you had a single administration of these programs? And Mr. Hernandez, as you answer this question, you know, you and I have had this conversation, Fahi in my district, which does some good work. It just doesn't make sense that Congress has to intervene so that certain rural places have to be eligible for one program versus HUD in a nearby urban area.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, what's nice about what we do is that we have what we call a storefront operation. You know, in the private sector, and I've been in the private sector many times, and I love it. And I love to come back to the government because people like to know what's the difference between the two. Sometimes in government, we like to say everything has to be like this, one way. What's nice about the private sector is we have different ways to get outcomes. And Congress was very smart, and they created agencies to provide different services. There are sometimes overlapping doesn't mean it's bad. You're trying to find what's the best way to provide a service. So in working with Fahi, we're working with them because we need to have a partnership that helps us reach out where we cannot do anymore. So Congress decided they want to have a definition for rural in character. Whatever you want it to be, we will implement it.
Well, what does RHS do better than FHA?
Oh, I tell you, we do lots of things better for all industry. Our performance right now on our single-family loans, multifamily loans, our performance is very, very good. In some places, better than FHA, better than VA, and depending on the type of product. But see, you can't compare apples to apples all the time. I know everybody wants to. This is loan making, so that's why we use metrics like first-year delinquency. Ours is better than FHA.
Speaking of metrics, sir, do you measure how many 502 direct and guaranteed loans are converted into self-sustaining, non-guaranteed, non-USDA loans? In other words, you get people into housing with no down payment. Are you measuring how many of those are able to refinance later and be self-sufficient, independent of the government?
You know, we're working with folks, we have a graduation program, so if people get a direct loan, that's where we're the lender.
I mean, I'd be interested in those numbers.
Sure.
Let me ask the GAO witness here.
Well, I'll get
do
you some
do
more
they
numbers,
do they
sir.
provide that data?
We haven't gotten data on that, but we haven't looked at it either.
See, you can measure success in different ways, and certainly one way to measure success is you put a roof over someone's head. I think that's one way to measure success. Another way to measure success, though, is that if you have a no down payment loan that's assisted by the government, eventually that individual builds up some equity, refinances, and becomes independent of the government. Do we measure that?
One of the things that we're doing right now is we're getting data from RHS that would allow us to do an analysis of what explains the loan performance for RHS and compare that with with FHA, so that we can see whether or not its processes actually do result in a better outcome.
Mr. Chairman, part
Yes,
of
sir.
what we're trying to do is to have better technology so we can analyze our data. That's why one of our proposals is asking for a flat fee so we can generate the automation and the analysis. We're actually doing some analysis right now. We call it an econometric model. How to better perform our mortgages. How can we slice and dice? To do that takes investment.
But I didn't hear the answer to the question. Do we measure whether or not the individuals move off of?
I don't have the data for you, but I can get the data that we do have.
That's important, because to me, that's success. If we're moving people from dependency on the government to independence, self-sufficiency, that to me is success. That would be a program that I'd be interested in supporting. The other thing I want to make mention is rural America has been hit hard in terms of credit availability since the passage of the Dodd-Frank law. The American Bankers Association did a survey in 2014. 2/3 of private sector financial lenders say that they would restrict lending as a result of the qualified mortgage rule. Maybe more people are dependent on these kind of programs because we're limiting credit availability as a result of the qualified mortgage rule in rural places. Yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison, is next for 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank the chair and the ranking member. Mr. Hernandez, I'm concerned about the lack of affordable rental housing for extremely low-income families. And experts say that 80% of the families earning below about $30,000 a year pay more than half their income in housing and utilities. And as you pointed out, housing is a platform from which family success can take off. And I agree with that. And yet, our Congress has been moving backwards. There's a shortage of about 7 million affordable rental homes for low-income families, and the House HUD budget bill wouldn't even renew all the vouchers that families are using this year, let alone restore any of the 85,000 vouchers lost to sequestration. So I have a bill out there, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about it. It's called the Common Sense Housing Investment Act, H.R. 1662, that would provide an additional $20 billion a year to affordable rental housing. And if my bill were to pass, what additional funds for Section 8, Housing Trust Fund, Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, and public housing, what would that mean for rural America? And are you familiar with my bill, by the way?
I'm not, sir.
Well, let me just tell you what we would do. We would convert the mortgage interest deduction into a mortgage interest credit. And so it would be 15% mortgage interest would be housing. Mortgages, 500,000, that'll be the cap. So we would, that's essentially how the bill would work.
Great.
And we'd have about $20 billion a year for affordable rental housing. Let me just make this observation. The United States of America spends a whole lot of money on housing. Mostly it's for the well-to-do in the mortgage interest area. We literally subsidize people who don't need it, and we talk about consolidation for people who do. So I guess if we were to convert mortgage interest deduction to a mortgage interest credit, cap it at mortgages of 500,000, 15% mortgage interest credit, we'd have extra money to put into housing.
Sure.
We wouldn't be subsidizing, the incredibly well-to-do anymore, but they still would get something out of it because it would be a mortgage interest credit. What do you think? How would it help rural housing if we had $20 billion more for affordable rental housing?
Mr. Ellison, one of the opportunities we have is the rental assistance we provide for rental housing needs are so high, but our budget allocation is just minimal. So we're barely meeting. So we have lots of folks that are rent burdened, as you've indicated.
Yeah.
They're paying more than their income, which means they have to make other choices. They cannot save for school. They cannot pay for health care or other things, or pharmacy or food. So anything that provides the opportunity for folks to have more discretionary dollars so they can make better choices. So in your bill, you may want to look at where's the rental assistance part. How do you
Right.
support rental assistance? Because that's a key part for us is rental assistance. We do not do Section 8. We only do rental assistance. And our vouchers are different than HUD's because we believe in a different way to provide assistance to folks in a different way.
Right.
So without reading your whole bill completely, I think it would provide some assistance to us, provide more services to folks in rural America that need help.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, there are more than, I guess, I think you might have pointed out already that you have loans on more than 11,500 properties representing nearly 333,000 units that'll mature by the year 2024, and many may be lost, and you provide housing to families on wait lists, assist with oversubscribed 515 program.
That's true.
Yeah.
Mr. Ellison, we have approximately 6 million units where people are overburdened. I mean, they're paying
Yeah.
more for their rent than they can afford right now. And they do it because they have a nice place to live. That's what we're trying to do, is get Congress to recommit to affordable housing in rural America.
Well,
Great
one
opportunity.
thing about it, I'm an urban legislator. My family is rural in background. My mother comes from a farm. My grandfather comes from a farm in Georgia. My mother comes from a farm in Louisiana, and I'm from Minnesota. And I could tell you that if you don't provide some sort of a good, solid program in rural America, folks move to the urban area. They leave the housing choice they may want, and it just leads to overcrowding in the urban area. So everyone needs to be about helping rural housing, so people can be supportive. So that's one reason why, in keeping with what Ranking Member Waters said, us urban members are, first of all, a lot of us are directly connected to rural America, but more than that, we want people to be able to live where they want to live. Some people like hearing the birds sing out there in rural America, and that's where their livelihood is. So thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
Hernandez.
Thank you. With that concludes our first round of questioning. I've had a request for a second round. I am going to defer my questions to the end, and with that, then we'll go to the ranking member, Mr. Cleaver, for his questions in the second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may not take the full 5 minutes. I've been on this committee since 2004, the subcommittee since 2004. And on May 25th, 2011, Peter Carey, the president, CEO of Self-Help Enterprises, board member, Housing Assistance Council, board member, National Rural Housing Coalition. And in his testimony provided to this committee in May 25, he says, HUD has limited experience in administering programs directly exclusively to rural areas. It is likely that rural housing programs would be force-fit. He probably knew it. Somewhere in the future somebody would do the shoe analogy. It would be a force fit into the HUD delivery system, which would change the ability of those programs to reach rural communities. HUD lacks the administrative system to deliver effective rural programs. Its programs' consistency and interests lie elsewhere. Do either of you disagree with that? Anybody?
Well, I believe USDA is focused on doing rural services, and so what we're trying to do is to find ways to streamline our process, improve our focus, and capitalize on our storefront operation, which makes it nice. We have offices that work directly with Tom Crew in Kentucky. They're there. So that's Tom Fern and the state director. So we have a state director in every place. That's a storefront. That's a retail operation. Other federal agencies don't do it. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Just mean we have developed, with Congress's input, a way to reach out to customers and solve it. So you may not just want a cookie cutter delivery system. And that's what consolidation is about, cookie cutter. Everybody should be the same. We have found a way that provides better service, changes people's lives, and uses the tools that you have given us. And that's why we come back and say, we need some additional tools, because we have a delivery system that's changing people's lives. We can measure the performance. We can measure the success. But to do that, we have to change. We are proposing how to change. But to do that, we need your help to enhance our delivery system. We're focused laser-like in rural America, storefront operations, and products that meet the needs for the limited income. Remember, these folks are only making $29,000. For rental housing, it's $11,000, $12,000. These are limited income folks that have smaller choices. And that's why we partner with the private sector to reduce the cost on us. The guarantee program, we have zero cost to the taxpayer. What a great program. And we're using the private sector to make it happen. We have a specific role. So what you've asked us to do, be creative, be strategic, and find ways to partner. And we are doing that, but we need your help on some legislative proposals. Our proposals are about 7 of them in there. We'd love for you to look at it. If you only pick 2 out of the multifamily, the ones we'd like you to pick, they're all important, but if you only pick 2, need the partial budget authority. When Congress goes to a continuing resolution, we don't get dollars. That means we actually distribute close to $90 million every month in rental subsidy. But if you don't give us the authority to do partial year contracts, by law, you tell us we have to fund the whole year by law. So we're asking for some management flexibility to do that. To do that, you have to change the law. The other thing we're asking for is access to the new hire database. We want the program integrity to be better. You tell us you want it to be better. Here's the opportunity. Support legislation that allows us the authority to access data that's there. It's sitting there. We're just waiting to get to it so we can improve the integrity of the program. We need your help there. On the single family program, we need help to delegated authority to streamline the process, make it easier for the private sector to provide service so we can monitor and provide good oversight. We can't do it without you. Oh, we need your help, and this partnership is so important. This is the great time for Congress to recommit for another 30, 40 years of affordable housing in rural America.
Good sermon. I'm into sermons. Given the current existing shortage and the number of available and affordable rental housing units in both RHS and HUD, and the longstanding underfunding of federal affordable housing programs, what are your concerns if there is some kind of a consolidation brought forth that's...
Well, my first concern is that who will be hurt rather than served better. So I look back at my maturing properties. I have 11,576, 400,000 households. That's a lot of people. Consolidation, whatever you call it. And I'm trying to get us not to think about a solution before you define the problem. A lot of times people jump to the solution. Apparently, you think consolidation is a solution. I'm not sure what the problem is yet. To me, the problem is, how are we serving customers better? So my first concern is, are we going to be better off than we were before? And so you have to line, what's the best strategy? What's the outcome we're looking for? I'm looking for better, safe, and decent housing in partnership with the private sector. We just guarantee loans. We don't manage these properties. So who's going to be hurt? So define the problem better, and I think Congress has the opportunity to help better define what you're trying to achieve here. And I want to be a partner to help you define the problem so we can collectively define a better solution.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
With that, we go to the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr, for a final question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So back to Mr. Hernandez's testimony about underfunding of rural housing. So we know the impact of the Budget Control Act and sequester. Between 2010 and 2015, the overall USDA budget has been cut by about 14%. Rural housing loans and grants have been cut by $208 million, or about 54% during that time period. These figures actually, though, would have been far worse for rural housing if Congress had actually enacted the president's budget. The president's budget request consistently proposed significant cuts that even exceeded the cuts that happened during sequester. In fact, this year, President Obama proposed an additional $27 million in reductions above and beyond what we're already looking at. So with our country facing an $18 trillion national debt, I certainly agree. We've got to get our fiscal house in order, and we've got to be fiscally responsible about deploying these taxpayer resources. So I'm as a fiscal conservative, I'm very sensitive to that. But my question is, why do you think, given your testimony here today, why do you think the president and his budget people place such a low priority on rural housing?
Mr. Chairman, we place a high priority on housing. Matter of fact, as I stated before, housing is a conduit of family, neighborhood, and community. So Congress reduces our budget. Whatever you give us, we will administer it. Or if you want to give us more dollars, we will administer those dollars. And the president is very committed to doing affordable lending.
But the president's budget proposes to cut it far more than what we have. So my question to you is, why are your priorities not the same as the president's priorities?
You know, our priority is to administer the dollars that are given to us. Whatever dollars you give me, I will administer. So
well, let's go back to this duplication issue, because as I pointed out with my question earlier about Georgetown, which is a suburb of a metro area, and Nicholasville, which is a suburb of a metro area, these, without congressional intervention, they would have been reclassified, and would have been ineligible for your programs in rural housing. We had to intervene because we wanted to keep those communities eligible for the rural housing, but obviously because of changes in population, you're getting overlap. And I don't think I heard your answer to the question. If you have one agency, you don't have to have Congress doing the song and dance and switching communities back and forth between rural and non-rural. You have one administration. Isn't that more efficient? Isn't that a better steward of the taxpayer resources?
No, it's not.
And I know you say we don't want a cookie cutter. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's your agency that does a better job. You talk about how you all are innovative and you're doing a better job. And your testimony to me earlier was you're doing better than FHA. So maybe it's your model that should replace FHA. Is that your testimony?
You know, Mr. Chairman, what we're trying to do is don't look at agencies first. What you do is you look at customers. What customers are you trying to focus? What we've learned great from the private sector, if you focus on the customer first, before you reorganize, consolidate, focus on the customer. Let me Mr. Chairman. Our customers are different than FHA. We compare to FHA because we don't have any other comparison. FHA does a great job, but their customers are different than ours.
Okay, so let's and my friend Mr. Cleaver was asking a great line of questioning earlier about HUD and whether they serve rural communities or not. My question to you, since it's different and you need different models, should HUD and FHA get out of rural lending?
Should we get out of?
Should FHA get out of rural lending?
I only talk about USDA because that's what I know. You might want to talk to FHA about their programs. You know, we do more than housing. We're a community development agency just for rural America. So I do jobs, housing, transportation, education, healthcare, and public safety. Does that mean you want to consolidate all one agency? Does one? No. What you try to do is who can deliver the service better to the customer. And that's what the private sector has done so well.
If
They
you can
create
do it
different
better,
people.
why is FHA in the rural places of America?
They offer services to different customers, sir. Our customers cannot qualify.
Okay,
with
Mr.
the
Charay, you
Wait,
ha-
I'm not done yet, sir. The way it works.
They
wait a
serve
minute.
the same
Hold on a second.
customers.
No, we
I
don't.
think what we
Hold on.
haven't seen
No, what we're
is-
going to talk
is
about is
Gentleman,
how.
gentleman from Kentucky controls the time.
Sorry, Mr. Schrey, I know you wanted to jump in on that.
Well, we're hearing a little bit of a fantasy here. There are differences in the customers that are served between FHA and rural housing service in terms of single family. So, what we saw was that they have the same, FHA is in rural areas, it's serving the same income base. What we don't know, and what USDA does not know, is how many of the borrowers it has could qualify for an FHA-insured mortgage. So is there really something needed here that they're offering? And I'm just talking single-family guaranteed right now. And RHS can't tell you that statistic because it doesn't know. And so that's what we're trying to get at here. And I agree they should start out with, how can you serve housing needs first? But you have to begin at the basis of understanding who you're serving. And I think there's a bit of a denial going on here as to who RHS is serving. It's the storefront notion, by the way, is a bit of a fantasy as well. Borrowers who are trying to get an RHS guaranteed loan and an FHA guaranteed loan are going to the same place. They're not necessarily going to a USDA office. The direct single family is different. The multifamily is different. I don't advocate one, and GAO does not have the answer to how to do this. We think the agency should take a serious look at opportunities for consolidation.
Okay.
Right
now, they're not.
My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Schrey.
Mr. Pierce has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cleaver mentioned how long he had been on the committee, and I've been here almost the same length of time. And Mr. Hernandez, I just had to make comment that I have heard a lot of witnesses, but I think you just out-preached the preacher. And we'll watch the instant replay to see if you actually finished ahead of him, but you gave it a good run. My question for you, sir, is, Mr. Hernandez, is in the whole definition of rural that the CFPB came up with, did they approach you all when they had that definition? Because my state was severely impacted. They've got one county, and it's just got one road going north and south, and it's kind of a square county, and the town sits right in the middle of it. So we got about 2,500 people or something in the town and about 10,000 square miles. And so they put them in the same category as New York City. And so I thought that maybe that wasn't slicing the pie quite well enough, and so Mr. Cordray and I dusted it up quite a bit. But did they ever approach you?
I was not privy to any of those discussions on that.
Did you approach them? Did you, in defense of your customer base, did you write a letter and say, hey, this is crazy? That's what I said, but you might say it in better
What Congress
terms.
asked us to do is use a number of tools to help determine rural.
My question is, did you try to get into that discussion? Because it was a fairly significant disadvantage into the rural areas because they got defined completely differently.
No, sir.
When you describe your customer, who is your customer? What's
Depends on the program. The first program, if you look for the direct program, those folks are only making $29,000 or less. We have a great program.
I don't need all the definitions. The customer is, in your mind, the one that is receiving help from you.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that could be a single-family person.
So,
could be multifamily.
yeah, but as a person who represents 600, 700,000, which we all do, I would just encourage you to pencil into your definition of customer those people who pay the bills.
Oh, we do, sir.
And you do.
Sure.
I haven't detected that in your testimony. I've been on your side in a lot of stuff today here, but I really think that it's a one-dimensional look, and as somebody who's just trying to find the best, most effective way to govern,
sure.
It's not as effective when you sit here and say that the recipient is a total consuming view that we have. Now, my last question, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me through this, but are there disadvantages in the programs? Have you found harm done in any of the programs where you try to help people and instead harm results?
Harm.
Well, let me help you out, and I'll finish up with this, because I really do think that it's important for you to think about this other of the thing, and I think it was one of your programs. The first year I was in Congress in 2003, we went down to Las Cruces, New Mexico, went about 40 miles south of there, gave a check to a woman, and it came from USDA, about $4,000. She had the down payment. About 4 years later, she came up and said, you know, if it hadn't been for you, she said, I had a home before, but I was encouraged to buy a home that I could never pay for, and I only could do it because of the government guarantee, and now I've lost everything. So just as we're running down that pathway, and I appreciate the pros that you use when you talk about your programs, but understand that there is a downside to that when we're encouraging people to do something they cannot do. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Let me just wrap up here with a few comments and a couple of questions. Mr. Hernandez, I've heard from a number of people in the housing industry that use RHA services. They have concerns, and I think it would be beneficial for you to meet with them. Would you be willing to do so?
Love to meet with our
I know
partners
they've
and
got
stakeholders. Yes,
some
sir.
requests, and they've kind of concerned they haven't been able to meet with you. So if you'd be willing to do that, I'd certainly pass that on. Also, I think to Mr. Barr's line of questioning, I don't know that we are wanting to do away with anybody, but I think anytime you have, and GAO has eloquently talked about this and documented it, anytime you have a plethora of different programs and policies, some of which, in fact, with HUD, they don't even know how many they have and what they've got, overlap, there's bound to be some inadequacies, there's probably some holes, some people are falling through the cracks. I don't know why it wouldn't be something we shouldn't consider to try and figure out how we can provide a better safety net, a better program, whether it's to consolidate, whether it's to come up with a whole new group. Our job here is to find ways to streamline the process, to find dollars. Now, you've talked about that. One of the questions I have is when you talk to, somebody alluded to a while ago too, when they talked about the employees, if you proportion out the number of employees versus what what HUD has, I mean, you guys are about double staffed compared to what they are. I mean, are you looking to try and do away with some of these employees?
You know, we've been
versus the amount of money that you're overseeing, let's put it that way.
We're trying to make sure we have the right staff in the right place to provide better service, and that's why we focus more on business process reengineering. So we're looking for ways to focus on the real problem, which is how do you deliver a service?
Well, no, that's not my question. You've been very good today at going around the answer that we're trying to get to and get to your speech. My question is, are you looking for ways to trim your employee base?
No, I'm not looking for ways to trim employees. I'm looking for ways to provide better service. Where should I have reallocated resources?
So you're not looking to provide the same service with fewer employees.
Well, we do that today, sir.
That's a problem.
Well,
See, that's the problem, Mr. Hernandez. You're not listening to us.
Okay.
We're looking to try to find a way to deliver the same product, a better product, with the same number of people, and therefore it be at less cost. And you haven't said that. You haven't told us that yet today.
Let me share how we're doing that, sir. We've asked for automation. We have a number of proposals to change the way we do business. A lot of times people say, do this differently. And I say, wait a minute, before you start looking at
Just told me, though, you weren't looking to cut people.
Well, I'm looking at where should
I'm
the
looking
people
for
be?
ways to people who can be innovative and find ways to reduce your staff to be in the same levels of FHA. That's our, HUD.
So
That's my question, because
the question I think you're trying to get me to answer is how do you best allocate resources to deliver good service? That's what we're doing. We're evaluating business processes.
Now, let me ask Mr. Charest. Mr. Charest, do you understand my question? We seem to have, if you look at the total dollars, 120 billion versus $1 trillion. Look at the number of employees, 600 versus, I think it's 2,400 and something here. It looks like they've got about twice as many people they need compared for the number of dollars that are invested. Is there something inherent in there that there's a reason for that?
It's part of the reason why we make a recommendation for them to look at opportunities, because there's somewhat of a legacy here, where RHS used to have far more of its activity in direct lending, which does require a lot of personnel, but they are moving more and more and more toward guaranteed lending, just like FHA. You require fewer people to do that.
Okay. I know that you've got a lot of recommendations in your report. Mr. Hernandez, have you read the reports that
Yes, sir.
GAO, are you going to implement some of those?
You know, we're partnering with GAO to make sure we identify the right ones to implement. What's nice about his report, he talks about there's overlap, not necessarily duplication. So we're looking, where's the appropriate overlap? Where should it be? Just because you have it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Okay.
Again?
Mr. Charest, are they working with you?
Yeah, I thought so up until this moment. I think that all our recommendations should be implemented, not just some.
Well, Mr. Charest, as a former bank examiner and somebody on the other side as a banker, there are times whenever those recommendations don't fly. But quite frankly, I understand your point of view. But my question basically is for Mr. Hernandez and for you. Are you guys working together to try and find some ways to
Yes, absolutely.
find efficiencies, cut out the waste? Because, I understand there's always going to be some parochial interests here. There's not going to be
We have the same objectives here, and that's how to improve how government works. I think that we're a little bit less parochial, and so we can look across other agencies and see where there are also opportunities. And that's where we think that it's time to take a more serious look at those possibilities.
Okay, and I think that's what we're trying to do here, is find ways to get rid of the overlap, get rid of the waste, find ways to use the same amount of dollars more efficiently and effectively. With that, we've been graced with the presence of the gentleman from Texas, distinguished Mr. Green, for 5 minutes if you'd like to ask some questions, or you can make a comment or two, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm making history today. I've located myself in a bipartisan position.
It graces you. It looks well on you, sir.
With your consent and permission, may I stay, or do I need to go over and find my nameplate across the room? Am I okay?
No, you're fine. With the new and improved version, Mr. Hurt. How's that?
I'm very comfortable.
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. And I thank the witnesses and the ranking member as well, Mr. Chairman. And I regret my being tardy, but I did have another event that necessitated my attention with the Secretary of Labor, and took a little longer than we thought. I am one who probably does not represent what would be styled a rural area in the United States of America. Houston, Texas, for the most part, is what I represent. A couple of other smaller cities. But I'm very much concerned about people. This is my country. I love my country. And I think these programs that we are discussing are programs that have been implemented to be of help to people. They did not occur haphazardly, capriciously, and arbitrarily. They were thoughtful programs, and I think that they still have some meaningful rewards that we can reap from them. But I do understand that we've had some level of improper payments with RHS, and my concern has more to do with what corrective measures can we take as opposed to whether we should eliminate. I've just found that acquiring these programs is much harder than eliminating them. Once they're gone forever for the most part. So would you kindly give me a response?
Sure, Mr. Green. What we're trying to do is to find ways to prevent what we call improper payments first. And that's why one of our proposals is to do what we call the new hire database. So we're asking for authority to access a database that's operating today. HHS has this database. If we can address that, access it, we can make better decisions at the property level. It's not us. It's not our staff will do it. It's the private sector property managers that use the database to make sure folks are not getting into properties where they're not eligible. So I'm trying to prevent it on the front end. Now, sometimes people get through, are ineligible. We find them on the back end. And so we're working with some of the recommendations that GAO has given us to try to better perform on the back end side, putting better regulations, better training, looking at the calculations differently and better to make sure we identify the problems when we find it. But in most of my life, just like yours, you try to prevent problems. And so that's why our legislative proposals say, please give us statutory authority so we can have access to the new hire database. That's one of their recommendations. We're trying to follow the recommendation. For 4 or 5 years, we're asking for this. Every year he comes back, the report saying they're still not doing it. It's true, because we can't get the legislative authority to access the database. We need your help. We want your help so we can perform better there. So please look at that legislative proposal and see if you agree with it this year. And if we're willing to spend time with you to help educate you how it works, together we will show you the benefits of that legislative proposal so we perform better on the multifamily side.
Have you requested elimination as a solution?
I don't understand the question, sir.
Elimination of a program?
No. What we asked for is how we improve different programs and streamline the process, partner more with different federal agencies, align more to reduce the cost. use technology in a way that allows us to do more with less people, because we have less. We have 20% less more people than we had before. So we are doing more with less. But to do that, we have to have some technology then to replace that.
Thank you. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to simply say this in closing, Mr. Chairman. I don't want anyone to assume that I have realigned myself by taking a certain seat. Still the same Al Green that arrived here in 2005. Thank you much.
Great. Duly noted, sir. With that, we certainly, again, thank the witnesses for their testimony today. Again, we are on a fact-finding mission here with this committee with regards to what's going on with rural housing. Part of the job of Congress is not just to legislate, but to also provide oversight. That's right. And part of that oversight means we're responsible to looking into the activities of the different branches of government, of which, in this case, this committee has jurisdiction, and making sure things are done properly, make sure that the department's being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars, and that the laws and rules are being properly adhered to and administered. So, again, don't take anything we say out of context. We're trying to do our job. And so with that, again, thank you for being here today. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit additional written questions for the witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for their response. Ask our witnesses to please respond as promptly as possible. If you do get those questions without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit extraneous materials to the chair for inclusion in the record. With that, this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you very much.